Whenever you select an entity in the gCADPlus environment, you'll notice some little blue squares appear at strategic points on the entity. Here I've selected the line entity, and you can see the midpoint and endpoint, two endpoints and a midpoint. Let's unselect that. When you pick a polyline, or poly being many line segments, can you see that the individual vertices of the polyline are highlighted as grips? A polygon has a grip associated with each corner of the polygon. Something like a multi-line has a series of different control points or grip points. A rectangle has the obvious ones at the corner, the midpoint of each line, and also one in the centre. An arc will show you the centre point from the arc and the tangential point on the arc, the start and end point. These grips are very useful for quick editing. In the sake of an arc, I'll just move my Entity Snap toolbar out of the way for the moment. In the case of the arc, we can pick on these little knobs or extensions to the grip, and you can see we can edit the arc. So those grips appear on all entities as you place them. What we use these for is when we're adding new geometry. So if I pick the line command, and let's say I want to draw a line from down here, and I want to draw to the midpoint of that rectangle or perpendicular to that rectangle, I can use what are known as entity snaps. So I could pick the perpendicular option, and the software will do the hard work for me. Even if I'm off skew as I am now, let me zoom in a little. I hope you can see the little rectangular icon showing there, and if I left click now, the line joins perfectly to be perpendicular to the rectangle. So all the entities, let's pick up the circle and bring the circle in here. I could right click and say I'm going to repeat that line and draw from here to the center of that circle. I use this entity snap, they're called. So we're picking up and locking our new geometry into the existing geometry, and those handles are really quite important. You can edit with them. I can make the circle bigger by simply clicking on a handle. I don't have to use a scale command or whatever. So every entity that you place in a drawing has these grips on it. Any point on any entity can be found, let me just say no. Any entity can be found using, or any point in the entity, by using these entity snaps. And normally the entity snap toolbar is over on the right. If I go to View and Workspace and gCADPlus Default, you can see my screen reconfigures itself and puts the entity snap toolbar on the extreme right, which is where I prefer it. But you might like to have it located in a different position. So entity snaps are really useful and important, and as it stands at the moment, the entity snap is a single step operation. If I right click and say I'm going to repeat the line, I'm going to start down here somewhere and I want to draw tangential to that circle, I can right click and get the same set of entity snaps that appear on the toolbar by right clicking and picking snap override. So I can come down here to tangent, and that will make sure that that line is tangential to the circle. So you can run these entity snaps, find geometry either by clicking on the toolbar or right clicking when you're in the middle of a command. But entity snaps can also be made as running entity snaps. In other words, entity snaps that stay on. If I click over here, Object Snap Settings, turn Object Snap on, we've been using center and perpendicular. What else did we use? Maybe we'll turn on endpoint. So what's going to happen now is that gCADPlus will search for those every time we use a new command or place an entity. So let's do it again. We'll say repeat line, we'll come out here, we'll try and go perpendicular. Can you see how as I move close to the circle, it finds the perpendicular. If I come up here, it finds an end point. And I can't quite remember what we had on. Let me right click and exit, come back over here. So here we had perpendicular, center and end point. So I could right click and say line from here, and I could find the center of the circle. So I need to move near I'm moving my way around the circumference of the circle, and because we've got tangential on, it finds the tangent point and finds an end point, and it will also find a circle center. So you do need to be aware when you've got running osnaps on that the program's working very hard and looking for handles on entity that meet your current criteria. And if you look down on the status line down here, the osnap little status line indicator has gone red. It's because osnap is on. If we go to our box here, we can turn object snap off. In that way the little tab doesn't update, in fact, and we'll fix that in future editions, but that turns off. Now when we say I'm going to draw a line, we're now back into the system where we pick single osnaps there. And again, our toolbar doesn't quite update in the way that I would like it to update. If I drag it from here and close it and then view workspace gCADPlus default, it's still showing that those are active. If I come in here and clear them like so, this time the little options on that bar change completely. So there's some interaction. Let me turn osnap on. Osnap's on, but no particular object endpoint or midpoint is showing. When I tick endpoint, and you see now, sorry, I picked midpoint. Midpoint now shows there, and osnap shows down here. So it's not until we click there to take it off, but go back here and turn off that option, do things return to selecting single instances of an osnap. So I'm sorry this is long-winded, but you do need to be aware of your settings as you are drafting.